Phobias aren't just irrational fears. They can be powerful, paralyzing, and sometimes life-altering. Imagine feeling your heart race, your palms sweat, and your breath quicken at the mere sight of an everyday object or situation. For some, it's the sight of a spider, the feeling of being in an enclosed space, or even the thought of flying. These reactions aren't just discomfort. They can trigger extreme anxiety, panic attacks, and avoidance behaviors that disrupt daily life. The mind's response to fear is complex, and phobias develop from a mix of past traumatic experiences, genetics, and learned behaviors. While some phobias are well known, others are so unusual they might surprise you. Whether it's the fear of heights, social situations, or something more unexpected, phobias can affect anyone. Today, we're diving deep into 10 types of phobias. You probably have at least one of them right now. We'll uncover their causes, how they manifest, and what treatments can help. Stick around, you might just discover something about yourself or someone you know. So, without any further ado, let's get started. Number 1. Arachnophobia, fear of spiders. Let's start with one of the most common phobias worldwide, arachnophobia. This isn't just about getting startled when you see a spider. It's an overwhelming irrational fear that can trigger intense panic attacks. People with arachnophobia often experience rapid heartbeat, sweating, and difficulty breathing at merely the thought of spiders. Some might even avoid outdoor activities or refuse to enter spaces where they've previously encountered spiders. This fear typically develops from direct traumatic experiences, learning from others' reactions, or even evolutionary survival instincts passed down through generations. The good news is that treatment options are quite effective, with exposure therapy being the gold standard. Therapists gradually expose patients to spider-related stimuli, starting with pictures, moving to videos, and eventually working up to being in the same room as a spider. Number 2. Trypanophobia, fear of needles. This phobia goes beyond the common dislike of shots. Individuals might faint at the sight of needles, avoid all medical procedures, or experience severe panic attacks in medical settings. The physical symptoms can include a sudden drop in blood pressure, racing heart, sweating, and feeling faint. This fear often develops in childhood, possibly after a painful or traumatic medical experience, though some people don't recall any specific trigger. Treatment approaches need to address both the psychological and physical responses. Applied tension technique, where patients learn to tense their muscles to prevent blood pressure drops, can help manage fainting. Cognitive behavioral therapy helps address unrealistic fears about pain and injury, while exposure therapy gradually introduces needle-related stimuli. Some medical facilities now offer needle-free injection options or use numbing agents to make procedures more comfortable for phobic patients. Number 3. Claustrophobia, fear of enclosed spaces. Claustrophobia can turn everyday situations like using an elevator or riding in a crowded subway into nightmare scenarios. This fear of confined spaces affects people in varying degrees, from mild anxiety to full-blown panic attacks when in small or crowded areas. Those affected often describe feeling like the walls are closing in, experiencing shortness of breath, and having an overwhelming urge to escape. Even small spaces like public restrooms or fitting rooms can trigger intense anxiety. The causes often trace back to traumatic experiences of being confined or trapped, though sometimes it develops without any clear trigger. Treatment approaches are comprehensive, including systematic desensitization, where patients gradually face increasingly confined spaces while learning coping mechanisms. Therapists often teach spatial awareness exercises and help patients develop positive associations with smaller spaces. Number 4. Mysophobia, fear of germs. While everyone wants to stay healthy, people with mysophobia experience extreme anxiety about potential contamination from everyday objects and situations. They might spend hours washing their hands until they're raw, avoid touching doorknobs or shaking hands, or maintain extremely rigid cleaning routines. The condition often leads to avoiding public spaces, using public restrooms, or eating at restaurants. This phobia can be triggered by traumatic experiences with illness, watching family members struggle with contamination fears, or developing during times of heightened public health concerns. Treatment usually involves exposure and response prevention therapy, where individuals gradually face feared situations while resisting the urge to perform cleaning rituals. It's important to note that treatment should focus on finding a balanced approach to cleanliness rather than completely eliminating hygiene concerns. Number 5. Cynophobia, fear of dogs. This isn't just being wary of aggressive dogs. It's an intense fear that can be triggered by even the friendliest puppy. People with cynophobia might cross the street to avoid dogs, refuse to visit homes where dogs live, or experience panic attacks when hearing barking. The fear often develops from traumatic experiences like being bitten or attacked, witnessing others being attacked, or learning the fear from family members. Some people experience such intense symptoms that they become housebound to avoid potential encounters with dogs. Treatment typically starts with education about dog behavior and body language to help individuals better understand when dogs actually pose a threat versus when they're being friendly. Exposure therapy gradually introduces individuals to dogs, starting with pictures and videos, then moving to watching dogs from a safe distance, and eventually working up to being near calm, well-trained dogs. Before we continue, if you have been finding the video helpful so far, hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss more videos like this. Number 6. Trypophobia, fear of clusters of small holes. Trypophobia is a lesser known but increasingly recognized fear characterized by an intense discomfort or aversion to clusters of small holes, such as honeycombs, lotus seed pods, or porous surfaces. While not officially classified as a clinical phobia, trypophobia can cause strong emotional reactions, including nausea, itching, and a sense of unease. Some researchers believe this fear is linked to an evolutionary response, as patterns resembling clusters of holes can be associated with disease, parasites, or poisonous organisms. Others suggest that the reaction is based on visual processing in the brain, where certain repetitive patterns trigger an overactive response. Treatment options include cognitive behavioral therapy to help desensitize individuals to triggering images, exposure therapy, and learning relaxation techniques to manage the discomfort. Number 7. Acrophobia, fear of heights. This phobia goes far beyond the natural caution most people feel at great heights. Acrophobia can make everyday activities like climbing stairs, riding elevators, or even standing on a chair absolutely terrifying. People with acrophobia experience intense vertigo, freezing in place, and often describe feeling as if they're being pulled toward the edge even when they're completely safe. The fear can be so severe that some people avoid buildings higher than a few stories or refuse to cross bridges. This phobia often develops from past traumatic experiences involving heights or can be learned from observing others' fearful reactions. Treatment typically involves a combination of virtual reality exposure therapy, which allows people to safely experience different heights in a controlled environment, and cognitive restructuring to help individuals understand that their fear response is disproportionate to the actual danger. Number 8. Aerophobia, fear of flying. Aerophobia can be particularly challenging in our globally connected world where air travel is often necessary. This isn't just nervousness during turbulence. It's an overwhelming fear that can prevent people from taking flights altogether. Those affected often experience intense anxiety days or weeks before a scheduled flight, with symptoms including panic attacks, nausea, and dizziness, even when just thinking about flying. Some people might obsessively research plane crashes or weather conditions, while others completely avoid airports. The fear often stems from a combination of factors, including fear of heights, lack of control, claustrophobia, or previous negative flying experiences. Treatment typically involves education about aviation safety, understanding how planes work, and the multiple safety systems in place. Virtual reality exposure therapy has become increasingly popular, allowing people to experience simulated flights in a controlled environment while learning anxiety management techniques. Number 9. Agoraphobia, fear of open or crowded spaces. Agoraphobia is the fear of situations where escape might be difficult or where help may not be available if anxiety occurs. Imagine feeling so anxious about leaving your home that even going to the grocery store feels like climbing Mount Everest. That's what people with agoraphobia deal with every day. They often feel intense panic when they're in places like busy shopping malls, public transport, or even standing in line at a coffee shop. Basically, any situation where they might feel stuck or helpless. Their hearts might race, their palms get sweaty, and they might feel like they can't breathe properly. Sometimes it starts after someone has a really bad panic attack in public, and they become so worried about having another one that they start avoiding going out altogether. Number 10. Thanatophobia, fear of death. Last but certainly not least, thanatophobia represents the extreme fear of death or dying, which goes beyond the normal contemplation of mortality that most people experience. This phobia can manifest as constant anxiety about health, avoiding activities perceived as potentially dangerous, or becoming preoccupied with death-related thoughts. People might experience panic attacks when thinking about death, avoid funerals or hospitals, or become extremely anxious about aging. The fear can be so intense that it prevents people from fully engaging in life out of constant worry about death. This phobia often develops during major life transitions, after losing loved ones, or during periods of existential questioning. Treatment typically involves a combination of cognitive behavioral therapy to address catastrophic thinking patterns and existential therapy to help individuals find meaning and acceptance in life's finite nature. At the end, remember, while these phobias can be extremely challenging to live with, they're all treatable with proper professional help. The key is recognizing when a fear has become severe enough to impact daily life and seeking support from mental health professionals who specialize in anxiety disorders. Now, we want to hear from you. Have you ever experienced a phobia that made everyday life challenging? Which of these phobias surprised you the most? Share with us your experiences and opinions in the comments below. We love to hear them. Thanks for watching.